deer.
I saw what this bug did to this lady, and she was very lucky that it ended at that point.
Tonight on Denver7 News at 6, a woman is attacked by a deer her neighbors were feeding.
Parks and Wildlife says it's illegal, but people still do it.
Carrie Donovan makes her pitch to replace Lauren Boebert in Congress.
This district needs someone who will fight for them.
Why this impeachment trial will be different from a guy who would know.
You're trying it in front of jurors, in this case the senators, who are victims of the crime.
Plus revelations from day 2 of the Kelsey Shelling murder trial.
And frustrations mount as the Labor Department tries to get people their money.
We're hurting. We are really hurting out here.
And we begin tonight with breaking news in the murder of a man who worked at an assisted living home facility in Lafayette.
Police documents obtained by Denver7 show suspect Oki Payne was known by staff to be paranoid and believed workers were drugging him and stealing from him. Officers also say this 95-year-old knew he was not allowed to have a gun, but somehow held on to a pistol. And by his own admission, that .45 was used to kill Ricardo Medina Rojas, a maintenance worker.
A housekeeper also told police that Payne had repeatedly threatened to shoot someone and said she knew he had a gun. We have again reached out to Legacy Assisted Living for comment on the gun, but we have not heard back, and Payne will be in court tomorrow. A backcountry skier is dead following an avalanche in Eagle County. The body was recovered this afternoon. Early information shows the avalanche was 700 feet wide and ran for 1,000 vertical feet. This is the 4th avalanche death in Colorado this week.
Well, don't blame the deer, wildlife officers say. Blame the people who treated the doe like a pet right up until it attacked a woman inside her Woodland Park home.
Denver7's Lance Hernandez paid a visit to the neighborhood today. He didn't find the woman who was attacked, but he did find plenty of deer.
I've had as many as 10 to 15 in my yard. They'll come in and eat anything and everything.
John Friesema says he walks 3 or 4 miles a day and always sees deer.
Deer do not run away from me. They walk up to me most of the time, which indicates they've been fed by somebody.
Parks and Wildlife officials believe someone had been feeding a deer that followed a 77-year-old woman into her house Tuesday while she was unloading groceries.
She didn't know that a full-sized female deer kind of went into her house and kind of started eating.
When she saw it, she tried to shoo it away.
This deer got aggressive and pawed at her a couple times, hitting her in the back, scratching her, bruising her a bit.
Wildlife Officer Corey Adler says the woman was fortunate to maintain her balance. Had she not, her injuries might have been more serious.
We generally see them always daily at some point or another.
MJ Barth and her husband Bob say there is a big deer population in this area.
It's abnormally large because they have a good life here, and unfortunately there are people who break the law, feed the animals because they think they're doing them a favor, but they're not.
I asked the Barths what they do if a deer followed them into their home.
That's not likely to happen. we are a little more savvy than that.
Wildlife officials say it's important to let them know if you see people feeding wildlife.
We tend to go up and, like Corey said, we try to haze the animal. We try to give that negative reinforcement to show the bear, like, hey, we don't want you coming around here. We don't want you to come around people or dogs or anything like that. We try to haze them first.
Lance Hernandez, Denver7.
House Democrats intend to call former President Trump to testify in his impeachment trial. Specifically, they want him to answer his attorney's claim that he bears no responsibility for the events of January 6th. Colorado Congressman Jason Crow prosecuted the president the first time he was impeached, and he told our partners at Newsy this time will be different.
What's exceptional about this case is that you're actually trying a case involving crimes, and you're trying it in front of jurors, in this case the senators, who are victims of the crime. And the prosecutors, the House managers, were also victims of the crime. And the trial is being held in the courtroom of the Senate chamber. That's actually the scene of the crime. I can't think of any instance in American history where that's the case.
President Trump said late today he will not testify. Now, the Senate can issue a subpoena and order him to appear in court by way of a majority vote. Trial starts next week.
We expected Congresswoman Lauren Boebert would be in for a fight to keep her seat. We just didn't expect the fight to start this early.
You deserve a Congresswoman who cares more about getting results than getting headlines. I approve this message because real toughness isn't something you wear on your hip. It's what you get done for people.
With this ad, Kerry Donovan became the third candidate to challenge Boebert in District 3. Now, he sat down with the longtime state senator and rancher today to ask what she would bring to the table and why she's throwing her cowgirl hat into the ring this early.
The events of January 6th were hard to watch. It was hard to watch a violent mob take over our Capitol and parade the Confederate flag through our hallways. And an action like that and how Lauren Boebert was associated with was just something that I could no longer feel was appropriate for my constituents and the place that I grew up in. This is my home. And so I felt that it was really important that this district have a congresswoman who is more focused on them and their issues than grandstanding and getting headlines.
And Donovan cited access to broadband, drought, and health care as three of her top priorities for Western and Southern Colorado.
Watchdog group Accountable U.S. is calling for the Office of Congressional Ethics to investigate Boebert's travel expenses. Our partners at the Denver Post report that Boebert reimbursed herself $22,000 in mileage fees from her campaign fund. Now, Boebert says she did nothing wrong and spent the money crisscrossing the state to meet with her eventual constituents. The Labor Department says it's receiving thousands of calls every day from people desperate to access their unemployment benefits.
The state insists help is coming and that people will get their money. In the meantime, Coloradans make do without. Here's Liz Gilardi.
Dozens of people have reached out to contact Denver7, confused about their claims or wondering which phase they're in. We learned today the phase 2 group were people who are expecting to receive extended benefits but have exhausted previous claims will have to continue waiting. The Colorado Department of Labor and Employment does not have a firm date for when they plan to start the phase 2 rollout. They're hopeful it could happen by the end of this month, but for many people, that's not soon enough.
We're hurting. We are really hurting out here, and to make somebody wait over 2 months, almost 3 months, you know, who you owe bills to are not going to understand that.
The frustration is boiling over. Someone started a petition asking the state to accelerate phase 2 unemployment distributions. And we're also answering some of the questions we've received from viewers in a story that's up on our website. Liz Gilardi, Denver7.
Allegations of domestic violence and a jail cell conversation were the standout moments from day 2 of the Kelsey Shelling murder trial. The domestic violence claims were about Dante Lucas and came from a friend of Shelling's. A fellow inmate said that Lucas claimed there would never be an arrest because they would never find Shelling's body. The defense called both testimonies hearsay. Today happens to be Missing Persons Day here in Colorado, and the movement was started by Laura Saxton, Kelsey Shelling's mother.
2 people were killed in a home invasion near Steamboat Springs Wednesday night. Oak Creek police say Stephen Padilla Jr. walked into a home on Wild Hog Drive and shot a man and woman inside. The man died, the woman lived, and then while that was happening, a third person inside the house grabbed a gun of his own and shot and killed Padilla.
A Denver woman claims that homeless camps blocking the sidewalk are breaking federal law. Our Ivan Rodriguez took her complaints to the city.
Micah the dog is essential for Tambor Haven.
Micah is my eyes.
Haven is legally blind.
You notice that he advanced so his front feet were on the curb. That is to alert me that there's a curb in front of me. Then I don't trip over it.
A recent bus ride near the state capitol reminded her of how hard living with a disability can be.
I needed to go to the Civic Center station, which meant that I had to walk around the corner and proceed north.
But as she started walking, she could roughly make out something in her path.
There were tents on both sides of the sidewalk. At a certain point, Micah would not advance because there was insufficient room for him to travel.
The small homeless encampment near Civic Center Station made it hard to pass. Eventually, she did so safely, but not without fear of falling or doing it safely.
I told them to move so that I could safely pass. And they were very, very angry at me.
But was this incident a violation of Haven's ADA rights? Emily Schumann with the Rocky Mountain ADA Center says not exactly.
The ADA does allow for temporary disruptions in service as long as the state and local government entity is addressing those as soon as possible.
Temporary disruptions could mean snow-covered sidewalks or, in this case, a homeless encampment. But it still doesn't allow the city to wash its hands of keeping them accessible.
If it's a sidewalk, if it's a bus stop that is owned and operated by the city or the county, it's their responsibility to make sure that that accessible feature is maintained and in operable condition.
Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure says it's immediately sending out a crew to address the situation.
Trying to live with a major disability is very difficult. I don't expect the city to spend extra money on me. I just want the city of Denver to make it possible for those of us who are disabled to travel safely.
A delicate balance between keeping public sidewalks open for all and treating those living in encampments with compassion. Ivan Rodriguez, Denver7.
Well, police are asking for your help tonight, finding a woman who tried to burn down the Denver Press Club.
And this one feels a little personal. Before the pandemic, the Press Club is where Denver7 employees play trivia. They put me in the Hall of Fame there in 2018. Bob Woodward stopped by once, and that was pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Now, for some reason, someone tried to set the club on fire last month. They didn't take out the building, but they did cost thousands of dollars in damage. Now, the Press Club does not have money lying around. So, if you know anything that could help the investigation, please give police a call.
Don't ask me how many calories are in this, and we won't tell you no lies.
We wanted to be able to be extremely creative and decadent.
Plus, a couple of Broncos starters say they wouldn't mind seeing Deshaun Watson in orange.
Chilly temperatures today across Colorado, and there's more snow on the way.